Hi friends, this video/podcast is going to be a conversation with YouTube creator and photographer Sean Tucker. And I was very excited going into this conversation. One of the reasons being because I have a ton of respect for Sean and the work that he puts out. He creates brilliant, thoughtful, well-executed, cinematic, moody videos. And I wanted to have a conversation with him about his creative process in making these videos, as well as his thoughts about art and photography. So here that is. Enjoy. It was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed listening to what he had to say. Hi friends, welcome back to another video/episode of the James Red Podcast. Today is an exciting day because I am here with a YouTube creator that I'm very fascinated with, and his name is Sean Tucker, and he is a photographer and YouTube creator. His videos are, Sean, I'm going to tell you very quickly before I allow you to talk, what I love about your videos so much.
Can I leave?
Yeah.
It's really awkward.
Your videos are very philosophical and moody and cinematic. They're very well produced as well. They're unique to a lot of what's going on YouTube, and your videos are also very measured in the way that you share information, and the way that they're crafted, and specifically the way you communicate. And you're just as much of a communicator as you are a video maker to me. And I find that in communication, people like to speak in vast, sloppy generalizations, and you're very specific in your language, and you do that very well. So how long, first off, how long have you been making YouTube videos? And hi.
Okay. YouTube, I mean, until about 2 years ago, YouTube for me was just a place to kind of store videos that I was doing for clients. So, you know, to embed something on your website, I started with Vimeo, and then they wanted money, so I decided to switch to YouTube and just sort of embed stuff from YouTube. So YouTube was never kind of a channel for me. I think there's a difference between just sort of loading videos up and having them exist there, and then or being deliberate about filming stuff towards a channel that you're building over time. So, yeah, it would have been actually January 2015. I did this series of 3 videos, which were because at the time I was shooting for a company and I was doing product photography for them. I was their in-house product photography, head of photography, but it was for very big products in big studios, lots of lights. So we had a big studio up in Peterborough here in the UK, and I'd have to travel up, and it'd be, you know, lounge suites and sofas and like big dining sets and everything. So when I started that job, I jumped online to see if there were any training videos out there to show you how to shoot big products. And there were a ton on like tabletop photography, but there was nothing really on how to shoot something massive in a big studio with lots of lights. So, you know, after I kind of got fairly good at the run-of-the-mill photography job, the kind of product side of it, I thought, well, maybe I could just help out by putting out the training videos I was looking for 4 or 5 years before. So I filmed them, I put them out, and they did quite well. Like, people sort of picked them up and passed them around, I think because there wasn't that stuff in that space at the time, or very much of it. But I didn't care about the videos. Like, they didn't excite me at all. And it was kind of a sort of faltering first step at starting a channel. But yet, like I say, it just didn't really sit with me. And then it was in beginning of May 2016, so over a year later, I thought, let me have another crack at this, but try something totally different. So I took a trip to Wales, a place called Snowdonia here in the UK, and I said, let me just I don't even know how I'm going to do it. Let me just film. I don't want it to be super vloggy, you know, that kind of very run and gun, quick edit style. I want it to be a bit slower paced, but I want us to talk about how I'm taking this trip. I'm trying out landscape photography, which isn't my thing. I kind of know how to do it technically, but I'm not very good at it. And just as a way to kind of refresh photography for me, because the day-to-day product photography was getting very samey, and I was starting to fall out of love with photography because it was so run-of-the-mill. And I posted that video, and that got passed around way more, and I cared about it, which for me was a sign that this is the direction I should be going. And then kind of from then, I'm not a, you know, post 3-4 times a week guy at all. Like, I pretty much post once, maybe twice a month. and so take my time to write them and flesh them out. But since then, it's about 2 years on now, almost exactly, and I've been fairly regular with that now, and now it's kind of at a place where I enjoy it or like it, or I'm proud of it. Yeah.
Very good. That's awesome. I think you should be proud, because I think what you're doing is unique compared to a lot of what's going on. A lot of people are going for a lot of energy in their videos. And I have found myself gravitating to the fringes of the people that are a bit more moody and focus, well, a bit more moody and dynamic in their content. And I'm also an introvert, which we'll get to more in a second, because you have a video that is about that, and I was fascinated by it. We'll talk about it, but I want to talk a little bit about just your creative process as you go through your daily things, your obligations, and, well, not even obligations, as you go through this project that is YouTube. I'm curious what led to your thoughtfully philosophical approach to your channel.
I mean, the reason I do it the way I do it is my background. So I mean, the first degree I got in university was psychology and sociology. So I got into the kind of psychology of stuff at that stage and really enjoyed it. And then the second degree I studied and was theology, and I worked in the church for years as a pastor or priest. And I think for me, I've always had a real interest in human beings and the philosophical, even spiritual side of life. And since I left the church, I think I've had a bit of a hole in me, because I really got a kick out of speaking to people and inspiring people and sort of pushing them to be better each day. And I kind of lost my context to do that. So it was a good it was probably about 2009 when I left. So we're talking almost 8-9 years ago now. And for a good 4 or 5 years, I did nothing. I just kind of detoxed from that time of my life and sort of did some processing again. And it was only a couple of years ago when I started that channel and I did that video, I thought, wow, there might be a way to bring together, photography, which I've fallen in love with as a pursuit, as a creative outlet, and also bring in this other stuff that I love talking about, which is, trying to work out who we are as human beings and how that ties in with our creativity and how we pay attention to that and bring it all together. And this YouTube channel is now the first space I've found to keep or come back to speaking that way, which is really exciting for me, because that's what gets me up in the morning. And I don't think it's the final form, but for now it's great to kind of build this and sort of experiment with this as an outlet. That's why the tone's there, right? That's why the subject matter's there, certainly.
It's funny that you say, so I grew up in the church world too. And I've also felt this, there's a directness to meaning that you feel when you're in that world. And assuming you believe in the meaning that you're after. But when you start to make videos for YouTube and different other crafts and anything you do in life, sometimes it's a little bit harder to attach yourself to the meaning. You have to put in a little bit more foundational groundwork to find that meaning. I have done this by becoming very obsessed with meaning in my work. And so I try to make videos. I try to always align my directionality with how meaningful is this. It seems like you do the same. I'm curious how you would describe your relationship with the pursuit of meaning in your videos.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes down a lot to. Gosh, we're getting deep fast, man. So it comes down a lot to
I have that effect.
That's good. It comes down a lot to people's pain for me, actually. I think a lot of people, and especially being on the internet in the way that I am, I'm faced daily with how lonely a lot of people are, how frustrated a lot of people are, how disconnected a lot of people feel. And I know that some of my journey has taught me things about those feelings that if I share them back now, that it helps a lot of people. And I'm always really encouraged by, the guys who follow along on my channel and the guys who comment. The there's a lot of that kind of safety in numbers feel, like, oh my gosh, me too, that's exactly how I feel. Because to me, it's very, very important that I'm not, and this is kind of a philosophical choice I made early on, that I'm not talking on that channel like I'm a big shot or that I'm an amazing photographer right off the bat, because I don't think that's true. I think I'm good. I think I'm competent, but you know, I know tons of photographers who are better than me, but that's not the reason for doing this. It's more a peer-to-peer thing. I think when I came up as a photographer and I was getting onto YouTube watching tutorials, I often found it quite frustrating that photographers on YouTube tended to pretend they were a massive deal. And, you know, talk as if the phone is just ringing off the hook the whole time, and people are just asking me to shoot all the time, and it's crazy. And then they disappear after a month because they went bankrupt. And you go, well, what happened? And you were obviously talking crap. There was something about what you were saying that wasn't true. And so I made a choice to be vulnerable and to be honest about when things weren't working, and honest about the struggle of creativity, and honest about, you know, the kind of battle that it often is as a creative person, or you know, trying to marry that up with the business world in a way that it pays the bills, and all this stuff that we all fight with, because I knew that that was helpful. I knew that that was something that everyone struggles with, and if they felt I struggle, they struggle, then they don't feel as crazy, and they don't feel like failures. They feel like just another person journeying with me, and that's really important to me.
Yeah, I think that because of that, it's funny you're saying that, and I'm connecting that to what I know about your videos at this point. And there's certainly an authenticity in your videos that comes through from the way that you work, and even the way that you craft sentences around this sort of peer-to-peer type of mindset, as opposed to coming to people with, you know, 5 tips to help them take better photos, or you know, being obsessed with gear, or any number of things that you see. So another thing I'm curious about is let's see, what did I write down here? Sorry. Okay. I want to talk about a few videos that you have made specifically, and kind of dig into them a little bit. And this is the first time I've taken this approach, and I think it should be interesting because I was fascinated by watching these videos, and you don't always get to talk to the person specifically about. I think it should be a fun exercise. So, you have one video called "My Street Photography Philosophy," correct? Okay. Now this one's fascinating to me because I too am a street photographer, and it seems like people, and it seems like you were touching on this too in your video, that there's a box that we like to put ourselves in, and when we consider what street photography is and is not. And I'm curious, well, for one, how have you what has the struggle been for you of trying to break that box open and maybe find different ways to look at things? And I suppose, what would you say to somebody who feels a little bit more boxed in?
Yeah, I mean, I think street photography happened almost accidentally for me a little bit, because I was, you know, shooting products at work, and I was shooting portraits and headshots for my own business on the side. But I wasn't feeling refreshed by that, and both of those things were starting to feel quite formulaic, which is some of my own fault, definitely. So I just made myself an exercise where, just on the iPhone at the time, I just said I'm going to take at least one photo a day and post it, and just to keep things going, force myself to go out and get a photo. And so just on my phone, running around, and obviously a phone is quite a wide angle. And so I didn't find myself, I'm not the kind of person who wants to run right into someone's face and shoot a person. That's not my personality. I don't really like doing that. It probably sparks some confrontation, which I prefer not to get into. So I ended up shooting, in some cases, I shot cities more like landscapes, where I was shooting spaces more and shooting light in spaces more. And if there were people sort of coming through that space, it was only to give a sense of context to that space. And that was because of, you know, a choice to avoid conflict. So it's not the best reason to choose. It wasn't like I choose this as my style, you know, it's just like, I'm a chicken, so let me do it this way, you know. And then you just start to see it a particular way. So then I picked up a Fuji X100, which is like a fixed 23 mil. So on that crop, it's a 35 mil equivalent, which is also a reasonably wider angle anyway. And yeah, again, it sort of facilitated that slightly wider look, that slightly sort of stood back shooting spaces more. And it's just slowly developed into a style that for ages I didn't want to call street photography, because it didn't feel like Joel Meyerowitz. It didn't feel like Bruce Geldon getting in people's faces.
Did
It
you
didn't
feel
feel
like
like
you had to get closer? Do you feel like you were contaminated by this obsession in the street photography realm to be closer to people and be engaging with people, and to not to push through your social screwiness in your head, so to speak?
Yeah, because I think there's a stereotype, isn't there, that street photography is one thing. It is getting in people's faces. It is shooting people up close while they're moving around. It's Robert Capa. If it's not good enough because you're not close enough, kind of thing. And it's not. I think that's the stereotype people have in their head, and I had it too, because I was putting that label on myself, and I would never have said I do street photography. Until, for me, and I think I said it in the video you're mentioning, I found someone said on one of my photos, "Your work reminds me of Fan Ho's work," and I think I've seen a video where you talk about him as well, so you'll be familiar with his stuff. That he shot quite wide as well, and he shot context and spaces and light in spaces, and that almost just gave me permission to go, oh, okay, well, if he's doing it and calling it street photography and he's amazing, then I can do the same thing. And it just, I mean, the second half of your question is what would I say to people who are stuck in some kind of stereotype is there's always somebody out there who's doing it differently. And even if there's not, you do it differently and call it whatever the hell you want to call it, because that's how things progress. I think the photography community can sometimes be very bullying. And it's not the interesting thing is, it's not the guys at the top. It's not the big names who are the bullies. It's what a friend of mine calls like middle management photographers, who are like photographers they're doing it as a business. They're getting some limited success, but they're quite frustrated. They're not the top guys, and they're looking down at everyone else, feeling a little bit insecure if anyone else gets some success, and they're bullying them. So those are the guys who you'll find will jump on your YouTube videos, your Instagram account, and go, well, this isn't street photography. Ignore them. Those people are also frustrated, and it's not working for them, and that's why they're bullying you. So just ignore it. Let it fall off your back. Call your photography whatever you want. It doesn't matter. There's not these rigid rules that the middle management are trying to impose on you. Do what you love to do. Call it whatever the hell you like, and let the images that you take be undeniable. Like when you look at the image, it speaks for itself. That's the stage you want to get to. And whatever label you give it really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. Well, I think it's almost like we want to cut shortcuts in our head by putting things in boxes. And it's funny how our brain works to constrain things. And when you really think about it, and one of the things that you did in this video, one of the major points of the video, of your video that I think was important, is that the entire mantra of the video was sort of asking you to explore your own thought process about street photography. And I think this is incredibly important. I found myself in a place recently so for a long time I was taking street portraits. So I'd walk up to people, ask if I could take their photo, that sort of thing. And so every day I went out there to take street portraits of people. There would be this intense tension in me to not talk to these people. And it was an ongoing thing. It certainly got better, and I loved the challenge, and that was part of why I did it. However, I started to try to take photos from further back and take more of an anonymous approach. And what's interesting is that by doing that, I became happier. I felt like I felt much more free in my compositions and in my movement. And I found that my photos actually got better. And I started spending more time focusing on composition. And so now one of the things I'm on now is I'm using a lot of subframing in my work. I'll start taking street signs and kind of hiding behind them a little bit.
Cool.
Maybe there's a tree, somebody's walking by, and I'll actually take a longer lens. I'll go out with a 70 to 300 because I just love the look of it. It's very
Yeah.
cinematic,
Yeah.
right? And my photos have legitimately gotten better. So one of the things I was speaking about recently was, and I still haven't quite figured this out in my head yet. Maybe what's the difference between when you need to face your challenges that are in front of you, and you need to face them, and that even though it's scary, that you know that the way is through that challenge, and when is the way another route that maybe when is the way a route that makes you feel more free, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so it's like, for me, I always want, when I see a challenge come at me, I don't want to move away from the challenge, because I think that that's a quick way to never challenge yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know what it's been for me, but I don't know how to put into words when one should focus one way or another.
What you're asking is, like, when are you taking a legitimate route with your art, and when are you just chickening out from a challenge?
Sure. Yes. Yeah? Yes. When are you letting social anxiety hold you back?
I mean, that's a really hard one. I think you have to be very honest with yourself on that. I mean, to be honest, because I'm a portrait photographer, I do want to get into taking street portraits at some stage. I'm going to have to work myself up to do it. So the idea that I won't ever take photos of people on the street, I know would be me chickening out, because I know what I want to do. And I suppose it's just being honest with yourself about what is the legitimate direction you want to take with what you do. And am I shying away from something I prefer to be doing because it looks difficult, and taking an easy option? That's a real internal. It's a real internal thing, I think. Yeah. I mean, like I say, I do know where I'm chickening out, and I know I need to push myself at some stage. But that said, like I say, I am really enjoying the style of street photography I'm doing, and I feel like I'm stepping into something which I love, and I won't give that up because I love it now. It's the way I want to keep doing things. And if I did take street portraits with people, it would be something else that exists on top of that wouldn't stop. So yeah, it's a hard one. I don't know.
And there's also value to having photography be a therapeutic experience for you, I think. That's something that's been important for me to understand. I think I need that. I need to not always be focusing on challenging myself socially. It's interesting. I'm an introvert, but I'm the kind of introvert that really enjoys a social and communication oriented challenge. Right. I like that adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that's where it gets into the stuff that's actually pretty difficult for some artists to figure out.
Sure.
So let's move on. I want to move on to the next video that you were talking about.
Yep.
I feel like we could talk about street photography for years. So I almost don't want to give it up yet. But okay, we'll move on. So there's another one that you created called "Shooting 50 millimeter on the island of Gozo." Is that correct? Okay. So first of all, your photos at the end of the video were seriously excellent. Well done.
Oh, thank you, man.
But one of the things I love about your videos is that you, in a very tasteful way, and the reason I say that is because there can be a very untasteful version of this, very tasteful way, you put a quote at the beginning of the video, along with this, very, very cinematic, moody music. And the quote that you put at the beginning of this one, which I thought was really incredible, was, "I think the 50 millimeter lens is an extremely good discipline lens. It requires you to see in a more refined way." And so it's fascinating to me, this idea of looking at a lens as a tool for growth and creative diversification, and not just a tool that creates a specific look. I was curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, specifically on the one side, I think, and I said in that video that limiting yourself to one focal length, snapping a prime onto your camera, I was there for 5 days, and I just said, I'm only allowed one prime. That's it for that time. And I wanted more primes at different points. I wanted a zoom. I wanted other options, but it forced me to think in a particular focal length. It forced me to move when I wanted to change composition. I couldn't just zoom in and out. and it forced me to kind of, because I was constrained, I had to get more creative at times. So that as an exercise, I think one is a really good thing, especially for starter photographers to do. It makes you quite disciplined. And I mean, 50 mil for me was definitely always my favorite focal length. To just, if I could only have one, it would be 50. It probably would still be 50, although 35 is fighting with it a little bit recently. But I mean, the other side of it is I think every lens has a quality and a feel to it, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
I've
mean,
always explained it as every lens has a different character and
yeah,
personality.
definitely. And I think that's super true. And when you look at, you know, your favorite Instagrammers online or whatever, I think sometimes what you're seeing is consistency in subjects and colors and the rest of it. But the other thing you're probably seeing is a consistency in focal length. And that's giving their work a mood in terms of how much they're separating subjects from backgrounds, or how much they're taking in with that view, and how they are in the space because of the constraints of whatever focal length they like to use. And so I think choosing focal lengths for stuff like that, I mean, I used to have a ton of lenses, to be honest, a load. And recently I've just sold most of them, and I'm trying to pare my gear down. So on my Canon gear and my Fuji gear, I've got one zoom lens, which is the 24-105 on my 5D, which is a full frame. So that's my just go-to for product shoots, because I know I need that zoom and I need that sharp lens, and just to have a kind of run and gun like that. So that I kind of think of as separate. But for my 5Ds now, it's 35, 50, and an 85 prime Sigma. And then for my Fuji, it's a 23, 35, and 50 prime, which is basically a 35, 50, 85 with a crop. So I've just stuck to those kind of holy trinity primes, you know, 35, 50, 85, because I know that I want to go to my 85s for my portraits. I want to go to my 50s for running around in environmental portraits, and I want to go to my 35s for street. And I got rid of my 24 primes and other stuff because I realized I just wasn't using them, you know, and it's cleaned up my whole kind of way of shooting, and it's cleaned up my gear. I don't have to carry as much, and I'm very, very happy that those are kind of what I use, and I know where they work as focal lengths, and I know when to pull them out now. And that's taken some time for me, because I think it's different for everybody. I mean, some guys will, like, if you're a landscape photographer, that's not your kit, you know. But I mean, maybe it is your kit, who knows? But learning what lenses really sing, where you get the shots that kind of speak to people, is a really good exercise. I actually because I had a blog a few years ago, and I did an exercise where I walked the same 5 miles every day back from work for a week. And each day I walked the same route, but with a different focal length. So the first day I walked it with a 24 mm and posted the photos and wrote about the experience. The next day I did 35, and then 50, and then 85, and then 100 macro. A friend of mine who's a great photographer, he kind of got hold of me after the series and said, well, the 50 mil is miles better than anything else. And I couldn't see that yet. And he was sort of feeding back to me, and looking at them, it was then obvious, like, wow, I live in that 50 mil space when I'm walking around. That's what really sings with me. Something about the character of that focal length really works. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a great exercise, you know, play around with the primes, play around with your zoom, but stick it on a focal length and don't keep zooming in and out. Move with your feet and work with that focal length and see what it does. So it's a good thing to learn, or kind of learn about yourself as well and how you shoot.
Yeah. Well, I will say that your lack of obsession with gear is a breath of fresh air to me. I am curious.
Yeah.
I am curious, when you see a lot of the photography related channels out there. There is a tremendous obsession with gear.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you think about that, and what do you think maybe are some strengths and downfalls of that?
I mean, this is going to be really hard without sounding like I'm crapping on people, and I'm really not. So let me say that up front. Like, I don't think I'm better than anybody. I'm not better than anybody. Like, what I'm doing is a choice. That's it. And I totally understand a photography channel spending their time talking about gear, because the fact is that is how you get an audience online. If you want views on your videos, don't talk about the process or the artistic process, talk about gear, because that's what, I mean, YouTube is it is the second biggest search engine on the internet. So you've got Google, then you've got YouTube, then you've got Bing and Yahoo and all the rest. As a search engine, it's the second biggest. I mean, I've on my car, the indicator light went out, and instead of like going to a mechanical, so I went onto YouTube, and so if there's a video teaching me how to change it, and I had the phone propped up on my thing. I went and bought the bulb. I did it myself. I searched for a question on YouTube to be answered. So when people are looking for cameras, they're searching by question, what camera should I get? And starter photographers are obsessed with gear, and that's fine. Like, I don't look down on anyone for that. I was like,
there's some level of that that's actually important. Yeah,
of course, yeah. You want the right tool for the job, of course you do. But I think what happens is, and I know this happened for me, so I'm not belittling anyone else. I definitely did this. Is I looked at great photographers, and what they were doing was so far above what I was doing that I thought, that seems like if I'm honest, what I was doing is going, that seems like an incredibly long road. Maybe if I just save up money and get the same camera as them, that road becomes a lot shorter. Which is, of course, when you do it and you drop cash on an amazing camera, you realize, oh, that's not true at all. I'm taking the same very average photos, maybe with a super shallow depth of field. So my friends are fooled that it's good photography because their cameras can't do that. But I know actually it's not that much better in terms of the content of it. So I think knowing that that's what most people are searching for, if you want to build a YouTube channel that's going to grow fast, the obvious trick then is to make videos for the questions people are asking, and most of those questions are around gear. So photography channels are feeding that algorithm so that they can build. And that's a legitimate choice. They're doing it as a business. They want it to work. That's why they're doing it. And lots of people are watching, and they're happy to watch, and they're getting good info. So that's a totally legit way to go. For me, that's not important to me. For me personally, I think, and it's not that these channels are doing this. I'm trying to be quite careful about it. It's not that they're saying, like, gear will make your photography amazing. They're just giving the specs and talking about it and showing images with it. That's absolutely fine. But I think the lie that can come through for new photographers is that if I get this gear, I'll be great straight away. And they drop lots of money and take out loans and dangerous stuff like that. So I want to do the opposite. I want to say that it doesn't matter what camera you have. I've taken shots I'm very proud of on my phone. And whatever camera you have now is definitely good enough for you to learn on. And when you look at some of the great photographers through the ages, and the cameras they use are way worse than our phones, even some of them, and they were taking amazing stuff. Like, don't let the gear be the excuse. Get something that is the right tool for the job, sure, because some lenses work for something, some cameras work for something. Get the right tool for the job, the one that you can afford, and stop making excuses and shoot a ton of stuff. And rather spend your money on going interesting places or having interesting experiences that you can get in front of your lens, because having an interesting subject in front of your average lens will make you a better photographer instantly, instead of having an incredible lens and the same boring subjects because you can't afford to do anything. That it will stay pretty much the same, you know. So I kind of speak quite a lot about that because I believe that's true. So the choice is a deliberate one for me, because I don't want people to think that you know, that's what photography is about. It is just a tool, you know, the camera.
And I think that the good thing about focusing on gear to some extent is that it is a gateway drug for people who are just starting out. They're going to be naturally obsessed with gear.
Yep.
And so if you want to get them onto the good stuff, move them away from the artistic the artistic, you know, weed into the artistic cocaine, which is the good stuff. That's a good way to do it. And gear reviews have always been the ones to bring in the most views, and they're the most easily searchable. And so if you find a channel that can marry that really well, you have something really valuable in your hands. The downfall is that we have a lot of artists, not just photographers, artists, who spend all of their time thinking about the technicality of art and not the emotionality and the meaning of art. I'm curious, how do you think we get people more attached to meaning in their work?
Yeah, I mean, I've got an interesting story with that one, because I did a trip last year in March because I can feel in my own work, even the portrait work I do, I'm not happy with it yet. And that's the kind of first love for me in photography, is the portraits.
What,
But
if I may ask, what is it about it that doesn't fulfill you?
doesn't fulfill me in terms of the portraits I've taken. Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
I've taken pretty photos of pretty people, and I don't care about them. You know, I mean, it's not that, you know, they're not lovely people. I know some of them personally. They needed the photograph. I got commissioned to do it. I'm happy to do it as a job, but I don't care about the photograph as a photograph. So, I mean, because that's true, and I wanted to sort of put more meaning into what I was doing, I took a trip last year to Namibia in Southwest Africa, and I went and shot portraits with the Himba tribe, who are these amazing people in Southwest Africa. They kind of paint their bodies with this kind of red ochre mud, so they've got an amazing look, and they've got these like red clay dreadlocks. In fact, you might be, if I turn this, you can see a couple of them on the wall here behind.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But yeah,
from what I've seen, they're absolutely lovely, well executed photos.
Okay, so that's the point. Is I took these to go and get them printed, and I took them to a place which is quite a famous print house here in London called Genesis Imaging. And the guy there, who's the creative director there, he has printed a lot of the Magnum Photographers stuff. So he really knows what he's talking about. And he's printing them and he's looking over them. We're having a good chat. And he says to me, these are pretty photos of interesting people, but I don't care about these. And I had a moment where I was like, oh gosh, you know, I've messed up. You know, he's like, no, you know, they're technically good, but I just don't care. And he wasn't being unkind. He was being honest. It was really good feedback, because even though I'd gone and put more interesting subjects in front of the camera, I was still playing the old game of trying to prettify stuff. And that was a step in the right direction, but it still wasn't there. And it was a good learning curve. And then I did a project in December last year where I went back to South Africa and I shot with 3 of my mentors, 3 kind of older men who were really kind of influential with me when I was coming through the church, especially. And I did a video about it, and I did a portrait with each of them, and sort of in a kind of very kind of moody Rembrandt style. And when I got those back, I was like, that's now getting there, because I care about these people. I'm telling the story about who they are. I'm saying something bigger about the fact that I grew up without a dad, and I needed these men to help me become a man at some stage. And I don't feel we do that enough as a society. We kind of don't take mentoring each other as seriously, and we're not as deliberate about it as we should be. So those to me felt like another step in the right direction. And I think, to answer your bigger question, I think finding meaning in your work is an evolution. I think people follow quite a similar path, I think, and I'm only kind of stumbling through it myself. So this is kind of me working it out as well. But I think, you know, we start out, we get very excited. We buy a bunch of gear. We take photos that we think are good, because, you know, we've got gear and we can shallow the depth of field and stuff. And we learn a bit of lighting. Maybe we're getting very excited about it. But then at some point the penny drops. There are tons of good photographers out there in terms of technical good photographers. And we realize that actually we're all just kind of taking technically good photographs. Go on 500px. There are tons of good photographers out there, but it doesn't, what they're saying, what I'm saying doesn't matter really. So the next step, when you get stuck with that, when you get bored of doing that, you go, right, now it's time to work out, what do I put in front of my lens? What stories do I tell? What do I want to say? What do I believe about life, the universe, and everything? What do I want to communicate? And that's where, for me, things start to get exciting, because, you know, I've spent time learning all the technical stuff. I don't know everything, but I know a lot now. You know, I've got a wealth of knowledge. I can walk into most situations and shoot without thinking very hard. But that's not the point. That's the tools. But I've been spending so long on the tools that I haven't worked out what I should use the tools for. And that's the next stage, is kind of stumbling through what I want to say, you know. And it's embarrassing. You know, I'm 10, 15 years down the track with it, and I'm only starting to take that very, very seriously. But at least I'm taking it seriously now, and I'm in the early stages of going, right, what's that next stage? What's the next step? And I think when you get there, you care about it more as well, you know, because it starts, and you have to know yourself. I think that's important as well, is you have to kind of, because it will come out of who you are, you know. So if you're not reading, if you're not you know, interacting with the world and working out what you believe about stuff. What's your politics? What do you believe about human beings? What do you think about the world and the way that it is and things beyond that, when you start to work all those things out for yourself, whatever's in that, that's what the message will come out of that you want to give with your camera. So I think doing all that kind of self work is super important as well.
Yeah. When I think that photography, it was so wonderful about photography as an art form, and any art for sure. And I think each art form has its own unique expression of this, is that your viewpoints and how much you have thought about life is you're able to express that through whatever you're sharing with the world through your work. I think that what happens is we find ourselves in a place where we are content enough and comfortable enough with the pretty photos, and there's something that has to happen in your brain. There's something that has to switch that says, okay, I don't have that much time on this earth. What am I trying to do with my art? And for some people, they don't like to think that existentially. That is the definition of my brain. I spend all my time thinking existentially. So it's easy for me, but I suppose one of my missions is trying to figure out how to help people who do think as existentially and maybe are confused about what they're up to. And people who don't, how they can find their own meaning and do something that they feel like is connected to who they are, and use photography as a means to share the things that they have learned about life with the world. One thing that has been incredibly important to me, and I too try to speak as from a peer-to-peer. I think that's actually really brilliant the way you put that, for a peer-to-peer perspective. And you hear me say a lot of times, this is heavily experimental. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying to pull it off. And one of the things that's been incredibly important to me is to have an ecosystem, I call it, to plan. So a notepad, an app, somewhere where you love to spend your time, and that you actually schedule time to sit down and write out plans and ask yourself, literally write out, what meaning do I want my photography to possess? And then start writing and answering that question, exploring your brain and digging up what's deep down in your mind. And you'll start to get closer and closer to what you're after, and you'll start to connect yourself with that meaning more. I think that whenever we find ourselves as artists in a place where we feel sort of bored and unengaged, I think it probably tends to have a lot more to do with a lack of meaning in our work than a lack of compositional thoughtfulness or alignment with the type of looking photos that we're after, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I think you're absolutely right saying as well that it is a subjective thing, and that's not for everybody. Like, some people they want to take good photographs. They want to shoot models all day, and that's totally legit. Like, ignore me if that doesn't resonate with you. That's absolutely fine. It's totally a good choice if you just want to go and take photos. But for me, I've always got in the back of my mind that it would be great to leave something behind that people care about when I go. And I know that that won't be photos of models, just like showing off dresses and stuff. That's not the stuff that people care about after you're gone. It's the stuff that tells a story. So that's a very subjective thing, but for me, that's important. I want to have said something with my life and with my photography and everything else. So that's why it's a choice for me. And I totally understand how that will just sound like super hippie and whatever to a lot of people, and that's fine. I mean, that's why I think my channel can be a bit polarizing for some, and some gravitate and some go, oh gosh, what on earth is this? Because I think it is for people who want to think about that stuff. It's not really for someone who just wants to buy fancy gear and learn the techniques and hammer out pretty girls all day in images. It's not really for that, It's a different philosophy.
Well, it's like I think your channel is a lot like reading in a sense, because it's something that you have to put effort into and build some momentum to. And the way that your videos are structured is they sort of force you to sit down and watch them. And this is a good thing. This is a really good thing, I think. And if you're intentional, it's almost like you're not after making it as digestible as possible, which is the game plan on YouTube for most people,
Yeah.
you're after making it be a journey that people can go on.
Mm.
And man, it's hard to get a lot of people interested in that world. But I think what happens is there's this sort of like Pareto distribution type of situation where you have most of the artists in the world trying to create digestible content. And this is an interesting dynamic to me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, to us, we look at the most meaningful content as the most valuable and interesting to us, because we're thinker types. But it's funny how your portraits, for example, all of this stuff, which is, I would argue, has a lot of drive and interest of people who want digestible content. Nothing wrong with this, by the way. It's just, it has to be balanced. But and also, I think that of course the drive of financial focus in our society. And believe me, I'm heavily capitalistic. I'm not interested in, but I think that there's a lot of value to it. But what does happen is your photos, your portraits, because they are so financially valuable, they are the ones that people see the most of.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
But this leaves a hole in society, I think, and that's where you have to have these videos that are more deep and undigestible, things that make people think and challenge themselves. And so your video, did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think I do a bit of speaking about YouTube here and again, and I say to people, you have to, because I've done it wrong. I've done it absolutely wrong. I don't post more than once a month ish, which everyone tells you can't do that. You have to be way more regular to build a following. Some of my videos are 25 minutes, half an hour long. That's a no-no on YouTube. You know what I mean? So, but I'm making videos that I would want to watch, because I'm assuming that I'm not unique and that there are other people who want that kind of stuff as well. And it's built a following, I mean, nuts, but it has built a following. And that for me is affirmation that maybe the people who tell you how to do YouTube to make it as digestible as possible aren't right. And that, I mean, I'm not going to be Peter McKinnon ever.
Yeah.
He is incredibly accessible and he's very good at what he does, but I don't want to be Peter McKinnon. No offense to Peter McKinnon. I want to do what I'm doing because I believe in the way I'm doing it. And I know that I could make it more like something else to make more money or to get more followers, but I'd hate it. I'd want to can it after a while and I wouldn't care about it. So yeah, it's really the only way to do it in the long term if you want to keep caring about it and not fall out of love with it.
Well, the good thing about the bad thing is that it's harder to grab a lot of people's attention. The good thing is that when you do grab people, you grab people in a special way. That sounds odd. You grab people in a special way compared to the way that many videos, because when I come across your channel, I go, oh, this is something. This is interesting.
Cool,
I want to spend a little bit of time here.
Yeah.
So with these videos, as you're going about creating them, what's your process, and how do you take it from the embryonic stages to a video that is 25 minutes long that you share, and then I would assume that at the end of that you watch it back and go, I am very proud of what I've created.
Never.
Okay, all right. Well, there's that dynamic too. You're right.
I mean, so for me, I've got a journal which I've just got in a bag with me every day. So there's like a list in there, and I've got a Google Docs as well. We have a list of video ideas that I've got. And I think like if I feel, I'll just scan through that list sometimes and see, okay, is this one ready to go? Have I thought about this enough? And if one's like, yeah, I've got enough to say on that, then I'll start to flesh it out. And it takes me way longer to write a video than it does to film it. It's a good, and I don't write it so that I use the words in filming it. Like I still want it to feel conversational, but I have to write it all out just for the sake of fleshing everything out properly and making sure that what I'm saying isn't just a rehash of what's already out there, but is something I feel like is worthwhile for people to take the time and listen to. So yeah,
it's
it'll be
intricate as well.
Yeah, and it's structured. I mean, funny enough, I actually approach writing a video the same way I approach writing a sermon. You know, I can see the moves and the parts, and I can see where I'm illustrating stuff and where I need to sort of, you know, so that kind of style of communication has definitely come through. And yeah, so it'll be, you know, a few hours in a coffee shop over a week where I'm just sort of plugging away at this thing, kind of refining it down. I'll usually just write a ton, like I'll write too much, and then the hard work is kind of paring it back down and refining it to work out, do the moves make sense, and I'm not waffling too much on any of them, and they flow one into the other. So I'm quite kind of, I enjoy that kind of being deliberate about good communication. And then once I've got that, I'm kind of working out how do I want to film this where, you know, and then I'll go out and I'll film pieces talking to camera, and it'll usually be, I mean, the way I've usually got it is I've got the sections printed out in my camera bag, and I'll take a section and I'll just read through it a couple of times, and I'll stick it in my camera bag and I won't look at it again. And I just kind of trust that the stuff that was in the meat of it will come out, and that if there were good phrases in there, that they'll surface as well. And if they don't, they don't. But it has to feel like I'm just saying it. I don't want it to feel like I'm reading something or trying to remember exact words. But that process works for me as a good balance between I'm prepared in what I'm saying, but it also feels more off the cuff. And then, yeah, it'll be 5 to 8 minutes ish, where I'm sitting somewhere and filming, and I might film 2 or 3 takes or something, and then I'll move on and I'll take the best of those takes. And then it'll be a case of cutting together the takes into the sequence, so that I can listen to the whole thing through just in audio, and it flows nicely. Then it'll be finding a music track, which takes forever. It's the hardest part of video editing no one talks about, is finding the correct track to soundtrack your piece is so vital. So I use I use Artlist and Epidemic Sound as like 2 subscription-based things where you've got nice libraries of music you can go through, because the music really sets the tone. It's the first thing that people hear with the first B-roll shot, and it sets the tone for everything. So choosing the correct music is vital for me. And then I'll build the track on, and then I'll build B-roll in. I start a lot of videos with a couple of quotes that I've selected to match the theme, and then I start talking through, and then, you know, pull it out. And then it's a case of usually kind of forcing myself just to post it. I often don't want to post it. I'm a perfectionist. I don't like what I've done. I rarely like something to the point. It's always a disappointment. Let me put it that way. So when I'm writing it, I've got an idea of what it'll be in my head, and it's never that, and it always frustrates me. But I've kind of learned that if I watch something back 6 months later, I'm like, no, that's better than I thought it was. And it's only in the moment I'm being very heavy on myself. So just post it and then leave it, let it do its thing, you know.
Well, so to me, there are 3 different versions of how one can perceive a video. There is the third-party version, which is how I see your video. There's the first-party version, the day of, which is how you see your video just after you post it, and you probably hate it a little bit. And then there is the first-party version a year later, which is like you go back and you go, that I did a really good job. That's like, you know, I'm actually really proud of that.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works. I'll go back and watch my old videos sometimes. Now there are certain ones where it's the complete opposite. I'm like, I don't want to share that with anybody. But there are certain ones where you're really proud of it, and you feel like you said something meaningful, and you sort of have this effect of like, this is the perfect video for me. And that's because it was you that created it a year ago. You know? Yeah. Just like your own sense of humor is your favorite kind. So one of the things I do love about your videos, and it's funny that as you're going through your process, I see how you craft this and how that dynamic comes out, is your communication, your talking is actually very open-ended. And what we see on YouTube a lot is this sort of say 3 words, cut, say 3 words, cut.
Smash edits,
and so you have what you have is a lot of people and millennials who don't know how to talk for more than 5 seconds straight, because they're trying to get that very specific thought exactly right. And this has been an issue for me, and I found I've sort of reverted back to the importance of being able to speak at length about something. And this is something that this is an art on its own that fascinates me. And one of the things I love about your videos, like at the beginning of that, the street photography philosophy video, I believe you spoke for probably 4 minutes straight, uncut, about something. And it was very clean and well articulated. And there's something very special about that.
Cool.
But another thing, touching on what you were saying a second ago, was you were talking about how you write and you write too much and then you sort of have to pull it back. There's I was speaking with my friend Austin the other day, who's a jazz pianist, and we geek out about musical stuff. And there's a guy named Jacob Collier, who's a jazz musician.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah,
he's amazing, right? Yeah,
he's absolutely incredible. And,
so I've watched he has these long 2-hour sessions of him creating a song from a single clip that one of his fans sent into him.
Yeah, it's I Harm You series. I know it. Yeah.
Right. And they'll send it in, and he will proceed to make a 250 track musical selection of awesomeness. Most of those tracks are his voice. And one of the things he said was that he will get all of the ideas out of his head. And then the way he says it is then you have the courage and conviction to get rid of what doesn't work.
That's it. Yeah.
As opposed to trying to very meticulously get just the right things in the place that they need to be right at the beginning. You have all these things floating around in your head that they're very vague. And the only way that you're going to make them come together into a creative singularity is if you get them out of you. And so I call this the creative vomit method. I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
I think so. Okay. So I just wanted to touch on your video. I'm excited about this one because and being introverted is something I'm very proud of, but it's something that whenever I come across other people who talk about introversion, it's something that is so core to me that I love to listen to what they have to say about it. And so you made a video called "Making It as an Introvert," which I thought was absolutely well thought out, beautifully done. And you one of the things you did was you used these open landscapes as B-roll throughout the video. It's funny because I live in Utah, in America, and the landscapes you were showing in the video are very similar to the landscapes you can find here. And one of the things I learned about Utah is that it is very healthy for my mind. These open spaces help open up your brain a lot. But the quote that you used at the beginning of this one says that for introverts, to be alone with our thoughts is as restorative as sleeping, as nourishing as eating, which is just dead on. Beautiful. So and also your business advice at the end was actually quite helpful to me. I think that that was something that every introvert should watch, because you are sort of taught to go into a room and try to be the loudest and the most interesting. And I think that we as introverts have a very special set of tools at our disposal that not everyone has. But I'm curious, what are the struggles of being an introvert for you on a daily basis?
I mean, I don't think I struggle with it anymore as much as I used to. I think I accept it. I like it. You know, I see it as a strength, not a struggle, really. And I think that's been a good shift. The obvious thing that I have to be mindful of, like every introvert does, is taking that space. You know, I mean, the definition I think I give in the video, and I can't remember where I got it from. It's not my definition, but it was someone saying that, you know, an extrovert is somebody who's energized and refreshed by being around people, and an introvert is someone who's energized by taking space.
That's the same one I use, because I'll go up to people and ask them if they're an introvert, and if they're an introvert, they're like, yeah. If they're not an introvert, a lot of times the answer you'll get back is, I don't know what that means. and then I have to explain to them what an introvert is. And so my response is always that it has a lot less to do with your amount of socialness And it
Yeah,
has a
yeah,
lot more
absolutely.
to do with how you re-energize
Yes.
yourself.
Well, I mean, I got a lot of comments on that video, and I wish I'd addressed it in the video now, because it seems to be a common thing. Is I think people confuse introversion with lack of confidence, and
Mm.
it's not the same thing. I don't think of myself as an unconfident person, but so you can be a confident introvert in the same way you can be an insecure extrovert. You know,
Absolutely.
it's not the same thing. So it's just a different mode of being. So I think, like, and I definitely feel this, especially like in meetings with people. There's a way to be in a meeting. If you're around a table with 10 people pitching for the same job, the extroverts will jump in first and talk a lot.
Mm.
But there's something to be said for waiting for your gap, and being invited in, and being one of the last to speak in a measured way, where you've taken in everything everyone else is saying. You've actually got an opportunity to say, I've heard everything that everyone said. This is my take on it. Not unconfidently, because that's a different thing, but in a very considered, very thoughtful way. I've been processing the whole time, and you can sound like the voice of reason if you play that card,
Mm.
and act that way. And that's to me. I think when people go, "Oh, I really struggle as an introvert," I think they're struggling with lack of confidence and confusing it. And that
Mm.
that is something you have to deal with, absolutely, because like we said, introversion is just a mode of refreshing yourself. It's a way you prefer to be, but you can build your confidence and stay an introvert. You don't have to be fake extroversion to build your confidence, if
Mm.
that makes sense. And you have something as valid to offer. I mean, like we talk about YouTube. I know that most YouTube channels are full of extroverts or people faking extroversion, because
Mhm.
they think that's what's going to get attention, and a lot of the time it does. But I wanted to model the other side of it, and give an example of what it could be to be a considered, still confident uh, communicator in a way that's different from, some channels verge on acting like they're presenting a kids show. It's like so full on and in your face and jumping around that, I'm like, oh God, I'm just exhausted watching. So I wanted to get something for the other side that just says, that's fine, and it's great. Some people absolutely love that stuff, but some people are looking. I get a lot of comments like, I've been looking for a channel like this, because it's almost the antidote to that, for that other crowd who don't really connect with that stuff and are looking for the other side.
Mm.
And I actually think there's a shift going on in YouTube, where people are realizing that that's the case, that there's a hole where people are looking for that other mode of communicating and being and seeing the world, that you could speak to, and you could move in, that would actually draw people in, because they don't have options there.
Mm. Well, I do think it's funny that whenever you find people who are extroverted and they talk about their friends who are introverted,
Mm,
they will often say that they are some of the best friends that you can find, because
hmm.
these are people who are deeply within themselves, and the way that they act comes out of that place, right?
Hmm.
And they're not interested in maybe pleasing your feelings. They're more interested in the morality of the situation.
Yeah,
And that's incredibly important. And I think that that's how we move society forward
yeah,
in our daily affairs, and also in our art,
yeah.
is people who are spending a lot of time. And the thing about introverts is we tend to naturally have this inclination towards thinking about things
Mm,
too deeply, to the point that
hmm.
we find ourselves being depressed sometimes, and we
Hmm.
need to go hang out with some friends who just want to laugh and
Yeah,
good time, eat food and stuff. But and also my wife she's an extrovert. She brings a wonderful dynamic to my growth
yeah.
as a person, because for one, she reminds me I actually leave the house. I just stay in the house for 5 days,
Yeah.
and like she right now she's in Miami visiting some family,
Uh-huh.
and I will probably spend 5 days not talking to anybody except for the people at the coffee shop.
Right,
you know,
right.
I,
Yeah.
so and what will happen is there's this sinister thing that starts to come about, where are you forget to leave the house
Yeah.
because you don't naturally want to engage with people so much. And the issue that starts to build up is you start to feel a lack of the right chemicals in your body to make you
Yeah.
happy.
Yep.
And it won't connect itself to the solution automatically. You won't quite know why. It's almost like introverts have to schedule. It's like where extroverts is like eating. You don't forget to eat.
Mhm.
For introverts, you have to schedule that social time in to make sure you actually do it, because
Yeah.
you'll end up in a place where you don't so much. Now
Yeah.
that's when introversion becomes unhealthy.
Yeah.
But a good thing is that I think most introverts recognize that and put the right friends around them that
Mm.
actually feed them,
Mhm.
and feed them with these deep philosophical conversations such as this one,
Yeah.
to make you feel better. And that's one of the reasons why I do this. Is it's a bit harder to find deep, thoughtful conversations
Mm.
in the world, I found.
Mhm.
We have a lot of quick surface talk,
Yep.
and and so there, of course, there's value to that. That's how you get to the deep talk,
Mhm.
obviously.
Yeah.
But but I think that it is important to continue to have these conversations, uh, especially I think my generation, who has decided to some extent to stop thinking about the way the world works logically
Mhm.
and factually, and we spend a lot of times with our feelings and this sort of thing.
Right.
So, one of the things that I thought was incredibly interesting about your video was that your friend Simon
Yeah.
spoke about how he used landscape photography as a means to deal with some chronic pain he was feeling.
Yes.
But that photography was a therapeutic
Mm.
venture for him. I found that absolutely fascinating.
Mm. He's great, man. He's an incredibly talented woodland photographer. And the interesting thing about Simon is because he has back pain. He can't walk for miles, over mountains and stuff without that becoming an issue. And even long car rides can be painful. So he started doing, but he also knew he had to go out and stretch and walk to be able to keep this sort of pain at bay. And so he started to go out in his local area, and the majority of the shots he's taken are no more than 20 minutes drive from his house. That's the incredible thing.
Mm.
And I mean, he's built a beautiful portfolio of images. I mean, he's like one he won an award a couple of months ago for as one of the landscape photography of the year categories. He's so talented, but sort of just through saying I'm going to go out with my dog, and he kind of went out with his dog into the woodlands and walked around, and then just started taking a camera with him for fun. That's how he got into it, just to alleviate this pain but not have to go too far, and started taking these images and realized, I might have something here. Jumped on YouTube, started posting photos online, and the rest of the world, and yeah, dude, you really have something here. You're amazing at what you do. And yeah, and he's now walking around with that dude is amazing. Like I mean, because when I walk into a forest, it's just a mess of stuff. It's like it's trees all over the place and angles and branches, and
Forests are hard to shoot.
it's really hard because it's just a
Yeah.
mess of shapes. And he's just got this, and it's only through hours and hours of walking through forest. That's how he does it. That's how he's got the skill, just over and over repetition. He's almost able to see, like, the trees to him are just like, he can just see the matrix of it all. It all just slots into place for him. And he'll just stand somewhere and go, right, well, this is the shot I'm going to take. And you kind of look over his shoulder and go, holy crap, how did you see that? How did you, I just walked past all this stuff. And it just shows, like, a guy like that who went in for a totally different reason has come out with this amazing skill set and a real art. If you go check him, it's Simon Baxter. Go have a Google of his woodland photography. You'll see he's got some stunning imagery. Yeah, fascinating dude. It's funny because we did that video together, that introvert video, and I got hold of him and said, I'd love to include you in this because we chat quite often, about YouTube and photography and the rest of it. And I said, I'd love to sort of interview you in this video as another introvert in photography. And his initial response is, am I an introvert? I'm like, dude, you're definitely an introvert. And it was fun to kind of have the conversation and, him kind of owning it and go, oh yeah, gosh, that's exactly why I do this. You're right. Some people don't think in those categories, but it's a nice kind of way to go, oh yeah, that's why I do this. That's why I love it. That's what I get out of this. And because a lot of people going and walking around in the woods for 2 hours a day would bore them. you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But for him, the way, I mean, if you watch that video, the way he talks about walking around the woods, it's a spiritual experience for that guy. You know, he feels something being there, and it's refreshing. So it's and he's got a crazy dog, so it's always good to get on camera.
Yeah, I saw the energy. It was immense.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
it's
like
intimidating.
some sort of supernova of playfulness.
Oh yeah,
um, I think the reason why that's important and that you shared his story is because I think there are a lot of people who are in similar situations, whether physically or emotionally, and there's something wonderfully important about finding something that you can dedicate your time to that's just yours as a therapeutic exercise.
yeah.
That I just think of so many people out there who can't quite figure out how to navigate through life in a happier way. And I don't think that's the core piece, but I think that is a piece of the puzzle that's incredibly important. So that's good. The last thing I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
because I think now is a good time to wrap this one up.
Cool.
You know, there's so many directions we could go. This has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much for your time.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, man.
I initially sent a message to you and said, "Hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time?" And that's my way to get you to talk to me for at least 30 minutes. I would have taken 10.
30 minutes.
And then the first question I asked you when we got on here, you'll remember, is, "Hey, how much time do you have?" So I was trying to see how long how we could work together on that. But what was I going to say? Oh, so with your channel,
yeah.
when someone sees a video of yours and sees your collection of video and takes in what you have to offer, what do you hope they maybe take away from that?
It's hard not to spit back what I know people have said, but I think I want them to take away honesty. I want them to take away a photographer who's willing to be honest about how difficult it is and that it's a messy journey. Like, I think that's really important to me, that they walk away with that. I hope that they see effort and me respecting the fact that they take time to watch a video, that I'm not just throwing something together, that I have thought about it, you know, and that's why I only post once or twice a month, because I want to make sure it's something worth saying. So I hope they feel that I'm investing in what I'm putting out there as well, and that it's something that I believe is worth my time and their time. I hope, in terms of like the quality, I hope feels more and more and progressively more cinematic as it goes along, because that is me trying to grow myself as a filmmaker. So that's I mean, when people have made comments like that makes me kind of very gratified. And I hope people, I hope in sharing my journey as honestly as I can, people just walk away encouraged. And that is comments I get a lot, is just that, you know, like I said earlier, the kind of safety in numbers thing, that they're not crazy for thinking what they think or struggling the way that they're struggling, and that some kind of weight comes off their shoulders because they watch it and go, me too, and now it's okay to carry on and not feel like a failure. Like that would feel great if people had that response to it and felt that way when engaging with it. That'd be brilliant.
I think for me, what I've tried to do is I want to actually be able to say I've influenced someone's life path.
Yeah.
I think that's an important question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
How can you influence somebody else's life? And we do this in small ways every day, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But I do think that to maximize that, you have to really think about what you have to think about what you are. You have to think about what you're actually doing, or else you'll just sort of meander. And so I think that, but I think that your videos definitely push people in that direction. Cool. And I think that, you know, a tangible example is your business advice at the end of the making it as an introvert video made me think a little bit differently about walking into a room and trying to connect with other people that I could collaborate with.
Cool. Yeah.
And so who knows what that'll mean in the future, you know? Yeah. It's not that I'd never thought about what you've said, but
Yeah.
it's the way that you articulated it that
Right.
makes me connect some things, some neurons together, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's good stuff. Okay, very good. That is it for this one. I will link below to your channel, Sean. Please feel free to check him out. His videos are wonderful. And I hope you guys have a lovely day. Please feel free to share your thoughts, and goodbye.